Should I do the intro? I do the intro. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Pass the Pilot with the amazing Johnny McFadden and myself, Stefan. I think this is episode 12 or 13, 12. We are still a little bit in preparation because Pass the Pilot is really about not being fully ready. This is all demo. This is all the look behind the curtain, the look under the hood and peek into the kitchen, right? So, and Johnny and I had this idea today, and maybe we want to explain a little bit what we want to show before we try to demonstrate it, Johnny. So, what was the idea and where did we come from?
Yeah, so the idea was, well, kind of twofold, building agents with agents, and also showing, I think, how we use Vertesia at Vertesia, because we
Yeah,
drink our own champagne, eat our own dog food, drink our own Kool-Aid,
yeah,
whatever you want to, whatever saying you want to
yeah.
use, right? And so there's been a
Yeah.
lot of kind of work lately done around how we can start to make things easier and more
For
efficient
ourselves.
internally. Yep, using
Yeah,
our own
yeah.
technology.
And also what that means in the broader scheme that we sort of draw here is like what it means to build on a platform versus like building one tool or the other. How does platform, as in particular an agentic platform as Vertesia is, allowing us to do that? And yeah, so what kind of champagne are we having here?
Um, yeah, so we're gonna have an agent that takes a transcript from a call. So this is something that's very timely because we recently had a workshop and we're now there's a lot of different things we need to do
Yeah,
based off the back of that workshop. Develop
right,
different use cases, create different deliverables, design documents,
right.
functional spec requirements. So there's a lot that needs to be done. We also use ClickUp. So we have to create tickets and put in ClickUp. And so
Mhm.
we are working on a process to take the transcript, take the recording, and do a lot of this stuff automatically. And then
Mhm.
all we have to do on our end is, review everything rather than having to build it from scratch.
Right. Right. I mean, the problem really begins for such a workflow, such a process, is that you take a transcript that is hopefully the other way structured workshop or meeting where you have a sort of guided agenda-driven conversation. But we know how meetings are, right? We go astray, we come to points. There's more discussion points about a feature, is that really needed or not? What's the effort level and so on. So I think that the first step, and that's something that a colleague of ours, our very good friend Chris, has already done. He created like a first version of this agent,
Mhm.
right? So what does that agent do so far?
Yeah, so that agent takes a transcript and then it will create ClickUp tickets based off what was discussed in that meeting, right? And it will basically break down like user stories and tasks. And what's really cool is he's built in the functionality where it will break out the user stories and the tasks that it identified that it's going to add, and then it checks with you as the human and it says, here are 10, right? Which of these look good, or should I add them all? You can say, oh, everything except for 1 and 3 look great. So go ahead and add those.
Oh, so that's already awesome. So it makes the
Yeah.
agent makes a reasoning, and that could be any good major LLM these days can do that. You can give it a transcript, it can do a summary, but what Chris did is he really created like an outline, a structure of how he needs. So he kind of defining a metadata schema, sort of, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, it's kind of yeah, it's basically identifying like the high level topics and use cases and user stories that
Mhm.
were discussed in the meeting.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think what's really cool that I really like about this is it allows you, because I was just in this workshop, it allows you to stay present during the workshop
Mhm.
because you know that we're going to have an agent analyze this and we're going to have it recorded. So you can
Yes.
you can actually focus on what's going on in the meeting rather than half listening, half writing down, half taking notes.
Right.
So I think that is, it's almost
Trying
kind of
to,
like, it's like, it kind of piggybacks off one another because it's
right.
like, not only do you have this agent that can speed up all this work for you after the fact, but it also allows you to do your job better because you can be
You can
present.
be present in the moment. I really like that point that you're making here. Because one of the things is, I mean, no matter how good you are at abstracting concepts, right? Doing that on the fly in real time, and that's what really good project managers so far, you expect them to sort of drive the agenda and the meeting to a degree, but then also take all the notes, right? And yeah, just only transcript won't do it, right? But because you need that reasoning behind that. So what was really agreed upon, and then the next step, and that's what Chris did. He puts it into a format of user stories, for example, and maybe people who are not so familiar with development methodologies, Johnny. Why do we need user stories? What is this for? And how do we how does this ClickUp, which is a project management software, which then developers are using together with project management to work on all these features and all the details and the testing and all this stuff. How do these things click together?
Yeah, so that's a good call out to go over what a user story is because there's probably a lot of people who aren't familiar with the term. So a user story is when you're developing an application or a process really of any kind, being able to look at it from the user's perspective, so the person that's going to actually be using this application,
Mhm,
and breaking it down into uh, basically like uh, isolated things that user would do. And
mhm,
that way you make sure that you're covering all the functionality that's required by the business. So a user story there, it's, it would be something like, as a admin user, I want to be able to add other users to the system, right? That would be one example of a user story. And so it's basically just making sure that we've covered all our bases off by thinking through every different kind of click path and use case that a user
yeah,
would be doing. And then
yeah,
we take that, we chunk it down even more into kind of not just the what they're doing, but the how we're going to do it.
mhm,
And we do that in ClickUp, and that is generating descriptions for developers so that they know what they're doing,
yeah,
calling out acceptance criteria so then the developer can develop it. And then someone like myself can go in and review it.
yeah.
And there's a lot of moving parts to this. Right. And so I think
I mean, sure, it's part of the Scrum methodology that we're
yep.
using at Vertesia, right? So how we run these projects, coming from that big vision that we will help clients develop how to create a vision for um, transforming your processes or optimizing your given business process with AI, not to just replace, but then bringing that down into these story arcs, these user stories, and then the developers actually building against that and understanding what are the different roles of the different people, the users coming into that tool eventually to use that, right? So what's the perspective of an admin you just mentioned, but what might be the perspective of the finance controller, right? Or
Mhm.
maybe the finance director. They might have totally different things they want to get out of an application. And this is, am I getting this right? This is what the user story
Yeah,
is trying to
yeah, no,
tell.
that's exactly right. It's taking kind of the vision of, hey, we want a app that will help us analyze customer data, right? And that's kind of the vision. But that on its own is not enough to build an application. There's a lot more that needs to be into it. The devil's always in the details. And
Yeah,
so, this methodology is really a way of taking that vision and turning it into something real
yeah,
and doing it in a way that is, it's kind of like it reminds me of the saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you have this huge
yeah,
project, but you want to
yeah.
break it down into smaller bites. And so that way it basically is, single tasks that a developer can do. And that way, all of those, once they're done, they build towards that larger
Yeah,
vision.
without losing the larger picture, right? But
Yep.
things have to be done in a certain sequence and with a certain goal in mind. It's not, and this is where many times back in the days we've all been, I guess, guilty of that. Oh yeah, we just have an idea of an app and we create like a visual, but guess what? It's totally useless. It looks amazing, but it's useless, right? So we prevent that by working with customers, not only the vision, but really going into the workshops and figuring all of this stuff out. So Chris had built that amazing agent already that's doing all of that. And then he kind of used the traditional way of figuring out that he used the Vertesia platform, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, to figure out how to connect to the APIs of ClickUp, or probably maybe you help with that. So what would that do?
Yeah, so he was connecting to the API of ClickUp um, in a kind of work. I'd call it kind of a workaround
Hmm.
because they have an MCP, which we'll talk about in a second. But
Yep.
it was basically connecting directly to their API to do things like, create a ticket, create a what they call an epic, right?
Yeah.
Um, things like that, or create even lists or extract lists, things like that. Everything that you could do as a user clicking around, um, right? It's making that available through the API, and it was like I
Yeah.
said, it was a workaround. So it wasn't the cleanest solution, but it was working.
Yeah. Well,
It
the
was
API
working.
is really you need to know how to use the API. And even though we can use agents these days to program the API connector, as it's called, right? It is still it's very direct. It's very fast because you're calling only one function, but you're already introducing MCP. I think MCP is this we talked about it, right? This new model context protocol. What does that really do, and how is it different from API?
Yeah, so it's really a wrapper around APIs for agents. So it's basically it was developed, I believe, by Anthropic as kind of the standardized way that agents will interact with other systems. And so you can think of it as an AI agent is going to go to, let's say, ClickUp, right? And it can connect to its MCP, and that MCP is basically going to tell the agent what's available for it to do. So it would say, right, here are the 10 tools you have. You can create tickets, you can download lists, you can add users, and that way the agent understands what it can do.
Yeah,
And all this is done, right, by the agent. So you basically
right.
connect the MCP, run the agent, ask it what to do, and the agent's going to reason through all of this and figure all of this out. But
Yeah.
it's just a way for um, I almost think of it as like every API call becomes what we call a tool for that agent. And
Hmm.
the MCP is basically the collection of those tools that the
Yeah.
agent can access and learn how to use. Because it's not just giving it the tools, but you have to have descriptions of what the tools do, how they can be used, so that the agents know, how to call it, for example.
So MCP basically helps you to dynamically, immediately create a dynamic connection
Yep.
to that tool. Where before days, developers had to read the API documentation, endless pages of like, if you want to create a ticket, if you want to change the folder, if you want to search for something, a user, whatever, you needed to know exactly the syntax and how to call it and how to do it. And then you would have to integrate that into your code. Now with AI, that might have gotten a little bit easier, but still API, you still need to know the documentation. With MCP, and I like this analogy because it came up the very first days. MCP is like it's like USB. Before
Hmm.
we had USB, every device had its own cable, its own adapter, right? And
Yep.
now with MCP, there's only one adapter, there's only one cable. And when you connect the two, when you connect your model, you connect that to that service, the database, the HR, the Salesforce, the Workfront, whatever that is, right? Or in our case, you ClickUp, they immediately click together and they know exactly what to exchange in order to make it work. So that's an amazing protocol. Um, in our demo, we're going to show that how easy it is to integrate how to integrate something like ClickUp via MCP because it's really just copy paste a link and it takes the authentication. We're going to show that. Um, but then Chris had a second component, and you already talked about it, and that's more functional. So it takes that transcript, and then it will create like a number of tickets or recommendations for these user stories, which will then turn into tickets for developers. And the user would need to review that. So the human in the loop is really an important component for that. So you just don't flood your project management system with random tickets, right? That make no sense. So how did Crest do that?
Yeah. So what's really, really, I think, interesting of how you build agents in Vertesia is how he did it was he basically added it to the prompt, right? He
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
after, but before uploading anything to ClickUp, make sure you
Yeah.
ask the user for feedback, right? And it's really that easy. And so I think
Yeah.
what's really powerful is things that you want to add some sort of like step to the workflow, you can think of it as, and
Hmm.
it's just writing it out in plain language, and then testing that the agent will follow it. And
Yeah.
in this case, right, the agent obviously follows it, and so
Mm,
it's
most
it's
of the time, yeah.
yeah, it's and again, if you wanted to add another step of
Yeah.
add, do a second pass, right, through and identify any
Yeah.
other, tasks that we might have missed, right, and then go to the human again. It would just be as simple as typing out
Yeah.
the instructions in plain language.
So you would basically just explain it to it step by step. This is what I give you. This is what I want you to do. Then come back to me and ask, and that, and then it's so you kind of programmatically give it the forth and back, and you would put that into the prompt. And in most cases, the agent, knock on wood, is probably going to do it like that. But this is the nature, the sort of erratic nature still of LLMs. There will be times when an LLM might come to the conclusion like, oh, I don't need to ask you, right? And
Yep.
it might just trigger it off. And this is where things get really scary for people. This is why it's so hard to trust, no matter if it's an Anthropic or Fable or Gemini, whatever. They're all Gen AI models, right? Part of what they are is that they are random, right? And it might come to a conclusion. For example, you give it the order to check back with you if something is okay. It might, for some reason, search for or find something in a document, right? That actually referred to that and say, like, oh, you know what? I have the information from the user already. Or you gave me that information already. It might make a wrong inference. That can totally happen. So I'm saying this is because Vertesia has identified these problems. It's not just like having a GPT or a Gemini or an Anthropic, whatever, and just let the model run with it. We are creating, I think we call it a harness, right? A harness around the way that the agentic models are working for Vertesia and for our clients. And one of the great things, I think we talked about it, Jonny. I think we've shown it already a little bit on one of the last shows is sort of that processing engine that we have, that hybrid process engine. There's also an article. I'm going to link it down there. Um, so can you explain a little bit what the hybrid process engine does?
Yeah, the hybrid process engine is well, it's the hybrid approach of, using the autonomy of agents and the predefined deterministic steps of a workflow. So there's value to both, right? So like you were just saying, maybe the agent follows it 90% of the time, but then, 10% of the time it goes off and it does something, it just assumes that you already gave
Yeah,
it,
I mean, if it
your
goes
blessing.
off only once in an automation workflow, that can have catastrophic effects, right?
Yep, yep. And I think what we've seen with agents too, and this is where the process engine I think was really kind of born from, was there are if you have a very simple task for an agent and it's pretty narrowly focused, right? An agent is going to do it great. Um, but as you ask the agent to do more and more work, it gets more and more complicated and there's more room for error. And that's where the process engine comes in because you can basically break it down into small chunks and an agent an agent might run and it will produce an output, right? And once it produces that output, the process engine will 100% of the time have a human check that, right? It's a
Yep.
deterministic step. So there's no leaving it up to the agent of, is this right? Did the human already approve this or not? There's no room for that. That's taken out of the prompt and it's put into this deterministic step, which would be in this instance a node of, request human feedback. And that
Mhm.
way you can build these processes that could be built with agents, but would be
Yeah,
hard to build with agents and would be messy and complicated and not always
reliable.
reliable. Exactly. They might not be repeatable. And so this process engine is a way to basically um, get the best of both worlds, where you can
Yeah,
use
yeah,
AI and you can use AI agents, but you also have the ability to say, this is step one, This is
Yeah.
step two. This is step
And
three.
that's a really good point, Johnny. I mean, you and I are advocating and speak, we've been talking about this in earlier episodes about how we like this new way of working where I'm giving the agent the outcome that I'm envisioning, right? And then I let the agent figure out the pathway to get there.
Mhm.
But coming to the point here, in a deterministic workflow, you decide exactly which are the steps, right? If you work that way, which is phenomenal, if you are working on drafting a solution for something, you let the agent figure out the best pathway to get somewhere. But the agent, to your point, would do it differently probably every single time. It will not follow its own best thinking unless you tell it to, right? Unless, and this is what Vertesia platform form can do, we can let the agent run it 10 times and then have another two agents make an assessment on the 10 runs and then
Mhm.
identify the best way that the agent took to find the solution. And then we say with another agent, okay, take the approach from step number three, from run number three, and build that into a deterministic workflow, right? And on top of that, and that's where the hybrid in this hybrid process engine comes in, there can be human in the loop steps. There can be deterministic steps where every node, think of a map, right? Every node can be a different LLM, can be a different model maybe. But some of these steps might be decided by a person. Other steps might be decided by an autonomous reasoning LLM, right? Which again lives inside a certain confinement of rules. But we're breaking, as you said, we're breaking it into pieces and making sure that the process is followed every single time with a deterministic outcome.
Yeah, I think something else that's really cool about the way the developers built the hybrid process engine is there's a shared context between among the whole process.
Mhm.
Um, and so when the first agent does something, right, you can choose what you want to be written to that context, and that context can then be passed to agents or even people, right, in the human in the loop step down the line. So it's not like you have an agent running, you lose everything that agent did, and it's just this step. You basically can choose what you want to share that's going to be relevant later on in the process. So there's again, it really is, I think, the best of both worlds with this process engine. And I also think it shows the value of having a platform because we have these building blocks that we can start to build on top of, right? We have an agent and we can use that agent as a building block in the process engine. But then we also have agents that can build agents and can build
Yes.
processes. So now we're building, and so I
It's
think that's
like a
where the
self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yep. And so I think that's where the value of having a platform really comes in is you have these building blocks that you can kind of feed back into themselves and build, you have, first you build the foundation and then you build the walls and then you build, I don't know, the windows into the walls, right? And so pretty soon you've built up, an entire house based on these different building blocks and you don't have to start from scratch
Yeah.
for every project.
Yeah. I mean, you still need to have an idea of what a house is, right? And what building blocks are. So coming back to that, like, yes, of course, with a certain degree nowadays with vibe coding, and I think that was another episode we wanted to talk about in the future. With vibe coding, you can do incredible things. But if you have no basic understanding about application architecture, you're gonna run into you're gonna tear down your own walls, right? You're gonna run into problems that might not be fixable anymore, that
Yeah.
cannot be deployed to a production environment. It will be amazing on your local machine to show it to your board of directors, and everybody will say, wow, it looks fantastic. And yes, it does the demo workflow, but you want to bring something to production level where it's reliable, back to that point, right? Um, and with hybrid process engine, so and the way we can build this, so um, we already had this existing transcript to click up, but we sort of said like, hey, we can improve this further, right? It was working as a demo, but if we really want to use this, let's show how we can do that. Um, I want to lead over a little bit into now showing people what we have done, and it's not ready. I've taken a step at it yesterday. It took me about 2 hours to get where we are so far, but allow me to share my screen and
Yep.
give you a rough idea of what this is. So, first step, we have a meeting transcript like this one here, um, and this is fully synthesized transcript. I just said, "Hey, agent." Acme Corporation has a meeting with a finance company, or they are the finance company, and they want to create like some AI platform features, and they have a conversation, and it's total hallucination here. What's happened here, right? So the attendees are not real of the NovaSoft Solutions Group and so on, and the Acme Corporation, their CFO and so on. So this is a total hallucination. But it was over 15 pages, simulating a real transcript of a real conversation with a with a client that you might have, and then with people making points, people explaining their problems, and basically, and Jonny, I think you created another one. We could also use that, but I think in essence they're probably identical. Um, so out of this, the task then is to take this and transform this into a number of individual tickets. And that would be something I have to show next time because I can't show it just yet because it's hidden somewhere in the process. But what I can show is that we took the existing agent that already did that. And as the next step, we said, hey, we want to harness that decision point and put it into the hybrid process engine. And all I really did was like, hey, take this existing agent and adopt it to the Vertesia way of building this engine. And what Vertesia did, and basically I can show this here. So this is what we call the studio assistant. Studio assistant allows us to work like an engineer with the studio application that you're seeing right now, but I don't have to be an engineer. I can just tell it, hey, I have this idea. Please build this out, and it will use all of the different components of the platform to build it out. So in this case, I said, hey, first of all, I want to connect it to ClickUp. That's the first thing it did. Then I said, okay, now let's replace the workflow, which was, as we said, agentic, right? Hey, agent, please remember to ask me. Good luck with that. So we put that into a proper process with the process engine. And this is what it looks like. When Vertesia puts something into a process, and here we can see basically, Jonny, what we've been talking about. I didn't explain to it what the process needs to be, right? But it understood just by reading the prompt that somebody had created for the initial agent. It understood that there's a component where it needs to analyze the proposal. That's unchanged. Chris did an amazing job at creating that. But then the second one was a condition already. So, and the condition was like, okay, read the ClickUp project list, everything that's available, and present that to me so I can make a decision where to put it. I might not know it, right? So making that a decision point in the process. So it would go out, fetch via MCP, fetch the workspaces and project list, present that to me, make that a decision point for the reviewer. And these are swim lanes here. We can also look at it in a diagram view in a moment. And then taking that, creating the tickets in a proposed way, and then routing the decision back to the user, second human in the loop point. And then as a final step, human could decide, okay, either you need to rework a ticket, or this is not a ticket. I don't want you to create that. That's actually not a user story. That's something the LLM might have picked up, which might be wrong. And all the ones which are fine, I'm going to confirm to you. And then when everything is fine and running, let me move this to the side. It's going to apply and create the tickets in the project management system in the right list. And it could do more things. It could assign it to Jonny, right? It could make it high priority based on that. So we keep it really simple. So for now, that was the first part that I built, and it's already doing it to a degree. So when I kick off the workflow here, I can simply say start. And it's going to ask me for the customer name. I'm going to say that's Acme, and the meeting date, it's this one here. And now it's asking me for the meeting transcript, right? So that you could just copy paste text, but I already have this document in our store. So here is the where is it? Aurora Nova. Wait, I had right there. Here it is, Acme. And go and run with it. And Jonny, can you explain what's happening in the background now?
Yeah, so now that you kicked it off, it's going to take that input, which is going to be a document, in this case in the content store, it looked like, and it's going to run it through that first node, which as you can see is an agent. And so this is the AI part. And it's going to do whatever the agent has been instructed to do before it moves on to the next step. And I think what's really cool about the Studio Assistant when it's building this stuff out is it doesn't build it in a black box. It builds this agent right here. You could go and you can look and see that agent, right? You can
Yeah.
see the prompt, you can see the tools it's using, you can see the model that it's using. And so the Studio Assistant it gets you, like, I like to think of it as it gets you 90% of the way there, right? And then it's your job as the human to go in and finalize everything.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's really powerful about the studio system we've added and kind of building AI with AI is we've done it in a way that's really, really transparent so that you're not just saying build a workflow and then you just have to trust the workflow blindly and hope that it works. You're building the
That's
workflow and then
that's a
you can
really good
go in
point.
and inspect each individual puzzle piece and make sure it's working the way that you want it to.
And think about governance, right? Think about auditability. Think about the way that people out there are just using whatever LLM to create applications. And yeah, but they're basically creating black boxes, right? It's impossible to trace how it was built, what was done, and also how it's going to work. Within Vertesia, that doesn't exist because everything that we do, that the agent does, that is created here is fully audited every step, every component, every way that things click into each other in a way. So to your point, so it is using this first agent here. I'm going to change my screen quickly from the document now and show that agent that's actually being used here. It's actually what the process here is using the process engine. It's tapping into an existing agent configuration, this one here, right? Which basically consists of, and here we can see about Jonny what we introduced in the beginning, right? We want this agent to use for the proposed tickets, right? It needs to have a certain structure. It needs to
Yep.
have acceptance criteria, right? To come back to the project management methodology here. Who is it assigned to? What is the description? Um, and really breaking that down from a transcript into a format that we can use it and apply it in the preem system automatically.
I think this part's really, really key because if you didn't have this kind of like force function of telling the agent this is exactly what it needs to produce,
Yeah,
it'll produce whatever it wants to produce, right?
yeah,
It will do a good job. It might produce a report that looks good, but without being able to actually force it into, the specific data points that you want, right? It's not going to be very useful in as a step of a business
yeah.
process like you have it here.
It's also interesting to see here, again, talking about harnessing, right? So this particular agent here, it has some very specific tools, some very specific things it is allowed to do, right? It can read documents, it can get a workspace hierarchy, it's understanding a number of things, but we are limiting it so it doesn't go wild, it doesn't go outside of this specific task I wanted to do. So we're limiting the tool list and just giving an idea here. There's so many tools on the Vertesia platform, right? Which could be enabled, but purposefully we kind of constrain the agent, restrain the agent to only use what is required for the task. Coming back to how do we govern agentic processes versus,
What,
yeah, you just have an
what,
enterprise LLM and it just does whatever it wants, right?
and why wouldn't you want to give it all the tools?
Ha! Because number one, for example, you wanted to strictly analyze only one document, right? Maybe the input document. If it has a number of tools available, an agent in its reasoning process might come to the conclusion, oh, I want to see other documents, right? Just to make a comparison about the structure. Oh, I'm seeing something I haven't seen before. Reasoning of the LLM might be, oh, let's see if there's other similar documents to infer the structure. So you give it the read document, the document learn document management too early, it's going to find other documents in your object store
Yeah.
and it's going to make wrong inference.
Yeah, so it's a really good way, I think, to put guardrails on the agents and ensure they can only do what what you want them
What
to do,
they're supposed to
right?
do. Huh?
Yeah, what they're
Same here with
supposed to
the, yeah.
do.
Same in here with the scope, right? We can create collections of documents basically, and then set the scope for the agent. It cannot break outside of that scope. It will only work within that scope of documents. So there's so many things which we had on the Vertesia platform for so long, but we're constantly bringing everything together. So now we're still at the process engine that helps us take that transcript and put it into ClickUp, but now we're showing how it integrates into an agent that we created independent of that.
Hmm.
Um, there's also the component of the actual prompts, right? And this is where I took an original prompt and I used Studio Assistant. And again, here's Studio Assistant. It wants me to confirm something. This is actually really interesting to see here. So it has worked to a certain step. As I said, I'm not ready with this, but it has worked to a certain step. It came up with a solution. It reasoned about, does it make sense what you want to do? I want a different structured output. So it's reasoning about, and then it gives me options here. What do you want to do, right? Want to verify? Do you want to switch to the new native tool calling? Do you just want to verify it yourself? Do you want an external orchestration wrapper to do things? So shall I make it more modular, basically, is a question. So Studio Assistant is like your personal developer. It understands what you want from a business perspective. It takes your natural description of something and it puts it into actionable agent code, so to speak. It's building the agents with you. Um, but anyway, so just showing that here, going back to the process. So this is what has been kicked off. So let's see how far this has come, because what I can do, just like with any other agent run, you can now go inside the process and see the conversation that's happening in the background, basically the agentic runs. I'm going to go to verbose mode here, and I see that it is still working. Okay. Okay. And here we see now what the agent has been doing so far, learning a number of different tools that it needs, starting reading what we call artifacts, which is basically the document. We had sessions on Pass the Pilot already about semantic doc prep, breaking down documents, long multi-page documents into semantic meaning and stuff like that. Not going to go into the details today, but really starts to understand the transcript, the hierarchy, and so on, breaking it down, 429 lines. And then as a next step, it's gonna create the JSON output. It's gonna create it exactly following the structure here. So, and then it's gonna pass that to the user to say like, hey, is this what you want? Are these the tickets that you're looking for? Um, no, these are not the tickets you're looking for. Anyway, and um, and then take it into the next step of executing the process. Um, so at this point, Jonny, I think we would cut and leave the rest for Friday
Yeah.
because it is stopping right there. I think we had an amazing intro, setting the scene.
Yeah, I agree.
But this is going to run for a little bit more. It's not really steady yet, and it takes a while. But in a nutshell, I have not enabled, so it does MCP, it does the ClickUp integration, but I've limited it to only, so in our applications here, the MCP connected ClickUp. So this is where we're showing all MCP connected applications or tools. And you see this one is connected. It's authenticated in my user context. And you see here, I limited the tools to read-only tools. So it cannot break anything and click up. It can only read for now, right? You
It can't
don't,
delete everything.
it cannot
Is
delete
that a
everything.
bad idea to have it be able to delete everything?
And this is the thing, right? And that's what many people maybe might be thinking, hey, great, MCP now gives my agent everything. Yeah, it can do anything. And it will do it it will do it worst case scenario, you give it an API key, right? That is sort of the admin key to the castle, and it just can delete everything. Just one wrong inference because the model comes to a wrong decision point, it's going to delete everything, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
well, I think I was gonna say because there's I think we want to be really clear here. This is very different than telling it an agent in the prompt, never delete anything, right? Because there have been tons of scenarios in the news where, well, maybe not tons, but I've read plenty of scenarios in the news where an agent did something and the person was just completely confused because they were like, well, I had very clear instructions that it should never do that, right? And that doesn't always work. And so this is literally when you uncheck that box, the agent does not have access to do that. So you could even tell it, delete stuff, and it would say, I don't have the tools to delete anything, right? So I think this is what we were talking about with guardrails, where it's really, really, uh, really important to be able to isolate the tools that you give the agent. So it's only going to do what you want it to do, and it's not going to do anything like delete your entire database.
Yeah, like your delete task is off. I could enable it, but I won't. Right? And Johnny, that's a really good point. That's why I say I think we should have a Pass the Pilot episode about governance, right? About governance
Mhm.
features that actually underline how Vertesia is focused on the enterprise world and making sure that we are creating the harness on so many different layers and levels. Not just like, hey, tell the LLM to do something or do not. We do it at the process level. We do it at the semantic doc prep level. We do it at identifying where in the process are we. And we also do it by limiting the actual tools. And just like what I showed before was limiting the tools, the Vertesia tools. Now we are limiting this for external tools, right? This is an
Mhm.
MCP definition here. And guess what? All of this here, coming back to Johnny, what you explained in the beginning, when MCP connects, it's negotiating what is available and what not. All of this here was negotiated between Vertesia and ClickUp when they made the first connection, right? So all of
Yep.
these things here automatically snapped in, and now they become, for me as a user or administrator, they become available to limit the functionality. And this is ingrained deeply into the architecture of the Vertesia platform. So yeah, so this is ClickUp. Um, and yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we might even take this to the next episode, Johnny, to be
Yeah.
very honest, because we
That's what I was
covered
thinking
so
because
much,
yeah.
right? Yeah, so with that, everybody, I would say stay tuned. I think it's a really great showcase and use case to exemplify. Number one, we can build a workflow, we can secure the workflow, we can make it stable and reliable. We are checking the governmental sort of auditability checkboxes. We've shown a lot of the platform today, and next time we're going to show the actual agent and process in the action. And I might have another tidbit for that one because Charles, our one of our amazing developers, Johnny, Charles is working on integrating the process engine into Vertesia Assistant. So you don't have to come to the studio interface that I've been working in here. You will be able to use any process and invoke or invoke?
Invoke it.
Yeah.
Invoke. Yeah, sure. Let's go
Invoke
with
a
that.
process from within an agentic conversation that you're having, right? Because
Wait,
he's building the process engine right into here, where you will be able, I'm just showing something high level, to run through this process right in here as you're sort of chatting with your project agent.
wow. That's
So
gonna be awesome.
yeah,
I just want to
so
say I was the one that referred Charles, so I get full credit for everything he does because I was the one that got him hired. Well, not got him hired, but made the
yeah,
introduction.
I hope you got a nice t-shirt. Yeah. So, okay, with all of that, Johnny, thank you so much for your time. As always, Pass the Pilot is not about being perfect. It's about showing things which are cooking. And I think we've been very honest to our own credo today. Uh,
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your time.
absolutely.
Good seeing you, and
Always.
have a wonderful rest of your week.
See you next time.
Bye.